of the Town of Berthoud Planning Commission. As I said, I just called the meeting order at 6 p.m. My watch is 5 to 9. Okay. All right, it's the tradition of the Planning Commission to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the current chair of the Planning Commission. I'd like to thank you for being with us tonight. Copies of the agenda, are they up front? Okay. Copies of the agenda are right up here on this little black table in the front. Please take one. And also please mute your phones at this point. Members of the Planning Commission are all volunteers. Our duty is to review application materials provided, hear public testimony, hear from the applicant, and then discuss the matters before us as they comply with the Land Use Code review procedures. Planning Commission is an advisory board to the Town Board of Trustees. We review and make recommendations on land issues within the Town of Berthoud. And I know I just forgot to do the roll call. So, Christian, would you take the roll call, please?
Certainly. Chairperson Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Kurtz.
Here.
Secretary Van Bentham.
Here.
Commissioner Feldbush.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Wing is absent.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to ask everyone to take one more look at their minutes. Any changes, additions, comments about the minutes from our June 8th meeting?
For me.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. A second, please.
I'll second.
A second. With that, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is our land use review item, and our staff will be presenting that item for us. So Anne, if you would present that item.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing, and as part of the public hearing process, there are several steps that an application process goes through in the town of Berthoud. And just for the public's information, one of the first steps is a pre-application meeting and discussion with staff, determination of that project's significance if there are issues regarding water or sewer issues, that we can bring that up during the pre-application process. Then the next phase is the application submittal, and that's where the application is actually submitted to the town. Town staff go through that application packet. We make sure that the materials that are required by code are submitted. We send out public notification, and we also send out notification to referral agencies such as the town water, sewer, stormwater, the fire protection district, the school district, CDOT, others that may have a vested stake in the outcome of the project so that they have an opportunity to make comments. Then once those comments are received, we give those back to the applicant, who then addresses the comments, and we keep submitting and reviewing until we feel as if the application is nice and squeaky clean to bring forth to the Planning Commission and then the Town Board of Trustees. So we also provide notice in the newspaper. We send notice out to surrounding property owners, and then the property is also posted. So for the public hearing or meeting, that's where we are tonight. Staff will give a presentation. The applicant can give a presentation. Members of the public are invited to come up and speak. And then the public testimony portion of the hearing will be closed, and then the applicant has an opportunity to come back up and address comments that were made during that public testimony. And then at that point in time, then the planning commission will deliberate and discuss the application and make a decision. On final plat applications, planning commission is the final vote. So this application does not go to the town board of trustees. Then after the application is approved, there may be conditions of approval that will need to be addressed. Documents are signed, it's then recorded, and then it's on the town then to manage those documents, visit the site to make sure that the applicant is adhering to all of the approvals. So then on the next slide, sorry, I'm not down there. Then this is where we are tonight, and then that is again staff presentation, the applicant presentation, the public hearing, and discussion and voting. So with that, are there any questions from members of the planning commission regarding the process? Okay, then I am going to turn it over to Will Charles with Baseline. He is our planner, and we are going to go ahead and hear Will's assessment of the project, and then we'll ask the applicant to come up and make their presentation.
Alrighty, good evening everybody. So it's a pretty short presentation for this one, but for the project, it is, and this isn't on any of these screens, I don't know if.
These aren't on.
And okay. That's fine.
So for the evening, this is Prairie Star 5th filing, 4th edition. As you can probably judge by the name, there's been a couple of phases and filings for this along the way. So this portion is that portion that is at 287 and Berthoud Parkway, just east of that existing roundabout. And it essentially is the kind of exterior commercial portion, and then a single row of townhomes just on the northern portion of that red L shape. And then also with Prairie Star, the entire area is a planned unit development. This one with an amendment in 2020, that's the guiding policies for this. And it's approximately 9.5 acres. So just getting into what the actual plan looks like. So this is page 1 of 2 of the final plat. So you can see the existing roundabout is over there on, just off the page to the left or the west. Then it comes into a roundabout in the center of the page. Then it goes, north and south during this phase. That one row of townhomes, you can see them just on the north, and then it breaks into those more commercial properties as we move down into the south, where there are these additional lots as well. Getting into the zoning map, as you can see, this is all PUD, so it's not super descriptive as far as what's on this map, but essentially the planning and development calls out this area for these similar uses, so commercial, a little bit of residential, and that sort of thing. Getting into your future land use map, it calls this out as suburban business, so again, in line with what those are. Getting into the criteria, the first one basically is a long way of saying, is it similar to the preliminary plat, which it is. The only real tangible differences between this one and the other one are with those townhome units. They were a different kind of ownership style in the previous round of review, or during the preliminary plat phase. So they're in this final plat, they're more on their own individual lots. So similar ideas to there, but just a little bit different in configuration. And then the other one being a slight road realignment for the Grand Market Parkway, which is the kind of road that goes through the middle of this. It's nothing major, just little minor tweaks. And then the second one is, conformance to all of the town plans. It is in conformance with those, and also just, you know, keeping in mind that this is also a plan unit development, so that's kind of its, you know, initial guiding light, and then anything it doesn't immediately address in it falls back to the code. So it does meet all the things of its plan unit development and then also the code where those don't apply. And then the last one, all technical standards, including improvements of water, sufficient amount and quality have been met. For this one, you know, as all these plans, they're reviewed not only by our planning staff, but by Public Works, engineering, and those departments as well, and they did find it to be sufficient. So getting into that, we are recommending approval of this with 2 conditions. So the first one is related to stormwater management requirements and providing more information that's acceptable to the town engineer and town utility department. Just give a little background on that one, since it's a decent number of words and what that is. Essentially, there's, you know, stormwater kind of concerns for not Prairie Star necessarily individually, but the areas that kind of flow from there over towards First Street. So it's as part of an overall area plan, more so than an individualized to here. But part of that will be, you know, making sure that this development doesn't have any stormwater concerns during all of that. And then the second part is amending the development agreement to make sure it includes the properties that are included in this final plat. And that's it for the presentation. I can answer any questions you have, and then the applicant doesn't have a presentation for the evening, but they are here and they have some slides in case you guys have any questions for them.
Commissioners, go ahead.
I have 2 questions for you, super quick. The adjustment to the townhomes along the northern edge.
Yeah.
What does that do to density, count, amenities? I mean, I know we're at final plat, but what does that adjustment do,
Yeah,
plus or minus?
so, you know, in totality for Prairie Star, it's about 850, you know, units of residential. And this is like within 1 or 2, I think, of what it was originally.
So are the same number of units and?
Yeah.
I don't see
And
any.
the applicant kind of clarified that a little better probably than I can.
I'm just wondering, cause there's little, they're not pocket parks, but there's green space and there's stuff in kind of the renderings we have in our packet
Mhm.
that I'm not seeing in the plat. I'd like to get just a little bit of detail as to what's adjusting over there, cause it
Right.
does sort of affect how it relates to the property to the north a little bit, so I just wanna walk through that. Second question, probably a pretty quick one, stormwater management stuff. Is there a reason why we can't get that resolved prior to final approval?
Final approval for this.
For the plat approval, right?
The main reason why we're kind of letting this go forward rather than addressing that is because it's not necessarily something that's this property. It's an area-wide. Basically, there's an area-wide study that was done that showed some concerns in this area and the water flow that goes to the south. So it probably wouldn't be fair or practical to hold up this commercial portion when it's not the culprit of that, it's this entire area.
That makes sense. I just wanna make sure we're not tying our hands by approving something where we've got a major sort of utility design unresolved.
Right.
And if I may, Madam Chair and Commissioner Van Bentham, one of the reasons is that there's a regional drainage challenge. And so the developer has agreed that they are going to come up with a solution to address a regional for the whole subdivision. What that challenge is for parts that are already developed and those parts that have yet to be developed. And like Will was saying, that the development of this commercial site is not contributing to where that drainage issue is. They just agreed to address it as a condition for this particular one. So it's, in a way, it's like taking a couple steps backwards, but the developer was in agreement and understands that there's something that needs to be fixed.
I do just have a quick question, not about the 5th filing, but about the birth and stormwater management requirements. I believe those were part of the engineering code we approved a year ago or something like that. So was there, so you said there was a study, obviously it's been a very wet spring and summer, were there actual flooding issues or I'm just wondering if they had initially followed what we had put out and then now it's no longer good enough and so we had to amend that and just mainly so we know for future
I
reviews.
mean, I don't wanna speak for engineers since I'm not
No.
one, but you know, this development's been going on for longer than the last year or two, so
Yeah,
those
yeah.
drainage studies and everything that
Yeah,
encompass the area were done before
yeah.
those policies were put in place. So,
They
you know,
were-
not
they
to
were
say
in
that what's currently, you know,
Yeah,
currently there wouldn't meet it. I'd leave that to the engineers to say yes or no, but this was designed before those
Okay.
requirements were put in place.
not knowing whether or not it would meet our current standards, I guess. Okay. That's helpful.
Alright.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Thanks.
Great. The applicant, I would invite you to make a presentation if you were going to, if not. To make sure.
I am Neil Olney. I am one of the partners at Prairie Star Development. And we have Aaron Bagnell, our main architect. We did bring some slides. We weren't planning on presenting, but might as well take through some of the slides and yeah.
Hi, I'm Erin Bagnall, as Neil has said. And these slides really will just provide some color and possibly answer some of your questions that you had about the previously approved FDP and where we are now. And again, like Anne has said, this is the platting process. We're really just designating lots, and it's allowing it's really allowing for the infrastructure to move forward, which will also be a part of that improvement of stormwater and management. So it's an important crucial piece to the further development of this and the final pieces of this master plan. So what you see here is the village center. So this is the southwest corner of Prairie Star Development, and we call it the village center plan. And this is from the FDP approval in 2020, the amended version. And this is just to say that what we're looking at right now is a portion of that village center, focusing on the area along 287 and the corner pieces, the majority of the commercial development. And then like we're discussing on the northern side, there's a slight difference in the type of housing that's being proposed there, and it's going to a more live-work function and less units in this area.
So it was in the FDP in that specific area, there were 40 density units, and it's going down to 10 lots.
Yeah, so and this is, you know, an overlay of what you're looking at, what you're approving, and the lot designations on that north corner. You can see there's 10 lots. The plan is that we're gonna have this pedestrian connection fronting on the south that acts as a buffer and a integration of the commercial to the residential. So that was the point in changing this to live work. But other than that, it's the same as we've been planning for the whole thing, and we're excited to get going on this portion.
And then it kind of to address like the transition from residential to commercial, that was part of the thought in doing kind of a live work type of product. Is on the back side is on the north side you have kind of like the residential parking garages, and on the front side having a kind of like a more of an office front style. But that's not being reviewed at the point, but that's the
Right.
intent of
That's the intent of
Yeah,
this.
the transition from the residential to commercial in a pretty thoughtful way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. It's, you know, not having the architecture, you're sort of looking at what had been sort of elements
Right.
in space, and now it goes to a bar, which sort of changes the design, and it looks it doesn't sort of fit what was there, and what was there seemed to fit with what was north and south. Not having any architecture, we kind of don't have any way to sort of evaluate that other than to just sort of look at the plot layout and cross our fingers. Like, you guys have it in your heads, but we're not reviewing that tonight, so.
Is there a landscaping buffer? Where that, you said the sidewalk areas, but is there some type of landscaping buffer between those townhomes and the
Here we go.
commercial?
See what we're seeing right here on the screen. So there's gonna be a really nice landscape transition area fronting those live work ground floor units and acting as like a buffer to the commercial towards the south. So there's trees and hardscape and plantings, and also this will act as, you know, if you see along the western side, there's a sidewalk along 287. This will also act to bring people as a pedestrian entrance into the site.
Commissioners, any other questions of the applicant?
Thanks.
Thank you so much for doing that. I think you probably answered a lot of questions that we would have had to ask you anyway,
course.
so. Okay. All right, with that, then we would move into our public hearing portion of the of our meeting. I would ask that if you do have something that you would like to say, first of all, that you limit it to 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium, state your name and your address. So with that, open the public hearing. Is there anyone who has comments for the public hearing? All right, if not, then we'll close the public hearing. So that takes us into the phase where the commissioners can deliberate over this particular item. Commissioners, thoughts? Who wants to start? I know everyone's jumping for joy this time.
I think that my questions have been answered, so.
Okay, thanks, Abigail.
Yeah, I really don't have any substantial questions. I mean, it seems like a thoughtful replatting-ish. I don't know if you call it a replat, but yeah. Seems to be intention behind it, so.
I don't have any other particular issues. I do have a question just, and I'm not sure who this is for. I think this is probably the staff. What we're seeing here, I mean, it sounds like the review and everything has been thorough, but what we're seeing in terms of like lot layout does sort of change in my mind how this part of the property relates to other parcels that we're kind of only seeing on the Prairie Star renderings on like the slides that start in the teens. And so I'm assuming somewhere there's you guys are able, maybe it's that you're able to actually sort of review sort of like future approvals, and you're able to see how that sort of massing wants to work with stuff to the north and the south. I just, and again, I don't have a particular issue with it other than I don't want to be tying our hands to a lot layout that potentially impacts how this bar relates to what's happening north of it and south of it. And I don't know the history, so I'm not sure what's been approved and what may be sort of altered from these renderings off the map here, so.
So maybe if we could ask the applicant to come back up and show us that greater rendering that includes this plus some of that that's to the north. And then we can talk about how that changed from the original. Oh, perfect. And so Aaron, if you can point out the kind of point out where the difference is and how that changed, and then we can see how everything is linking together to the north. And so I understand what you're asking, Commissioner Van Bentham. It's just that continuity and sense of community. And what I'm might be interpreting is just making sure that that cluster of homes isn't going to be just singled out and just kind of floating there by itself, but it's
Yeah.
connected to a greater community.
If I look at this, I think you're right. So the area there on the northwest where there's sort of the plaza and the pool, and I'm assuming there's a clubhouse and stuff kind of up there, the layout's very kind of structured. And then as you go along Berthoud Parkway, you have volumes that sit sort of within space. And then you've got this edge right along whatever the name of that first street is east of Berthoud, which is where you've got what appear to be sort of similar product, which kind of from an urban layout standpoint makes sense. What I'm just wanting to make sure is we had this sort of product adjustment that we're seeing tonight there seems to be the same sort of former product on the parcel to the north of it. And so it just like the urban layout just changes in my mind, and I'm not sure if like it just doesn't gel with me right now, because I'm not seeing what's
don't see
happening.
it.
Like it seems
Yeah.
like something should be happening different on the north side of whatever this cross street is, and we're not reviewing that.
We're
And I-
not, yeah, and so to answer to your questions and your concerns, cause I can hear them, there's nothing changes, if you can imagine the backside of what we're looking at tonight is still, and is in this plan, an access for residential.
Okay.
Whether it's garages or parking and it's that to the south and it's that to the north.
Okay.
That is going to be unchanged. The project type, the live work units
Mhm.
attached, is a little different than what you're seeing here, but it's density the same and, residential use wise, pretty much the same.
Mhm.
So I'm not as concerned about, and I get why you're concerned because you can't see it, but if we look, and these are all very small on my
Yeah.
screen, so I imagine they're very small on yours. There's going to be an architectural language, and the things to the north will talk to the things on the south. And not only that, you'll get to see that everything that is coming into this program right now, you'll get to see in a site plan review process, as
Okay.
Anne pointed out. But my main point is, there's always been that vehicular
Mhm.
access to the north, and that's unchanged from
Sure.
what we're
Okay.
proposing
Yeah.
today.
And I don't wanna outrun kind of what our purview is tonight either. I'm just sort of, the language is changing and the part of the way that our codes are set up, we don't really see that language until it's almost too late sometimes.
Sure.
So I'm almost saying this as much to just sort of put it on record. I'm assuming you're all sort of taking that into consideration as you've done with the rest of the property here. So I'm
Absolutely.
not concerned about it, but I just felt like it needed saying, because at some point, the architecture kind of turned a corner, and I don't see how it's resolving.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming you've got that all under control, and I'm willing to sort of trust that you do, so.
And from a high level, it was really intentional for us to replace residential with residential.
Yeah.
So the adjustment there is similar in type.
Right. Mhm.
And then also decreasing the density of actual units.
And from an urban design perspective, coming up with something that actually integrates better into the site plan as it's laid out, and it is something that's bridging between a residential use to the north
Agreed,
and
yeah.
a commercial to the south.
Mhm.
So I think that you'll feel good about it when it comes back in front of you.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Well, and if I may, Madam Chair, just a point of clarification, so a site plan is an administrative process and staff will review that, but if any of these land use types that want to move into the commercial lots requires a special use permit, you all will see that. But for the large part, a lot of the site planning work is just administrative. But it's still a very substantial application. Quite frankly, the site plan and a special use permit, they're a very similar application content. And still need to comply with compatibility and all of those things that you're bringing up. But they just don't come to a public hearing. Now, if there is a land use application in that commercial area that is deemed more intensive than the original thought, then you all will see that. For example, if there would be self-storage facility or a car wash or something that's more intensive, you will be able to see that in public hearing.
You just tripped over my master's thesis, that's all.
Oh, okay, sorry.
All right, any other questions for the applicant while they're up here?
I don't have any.
Thank you again. Appreciate that. Okay, any other comments or discussion that you wanna have about this project? Same spot. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion.
Go ahead. I move to approve the final plat application for Prairie Star fifth filing, fourth edition, due to the findings in the staff report, including compliance with the land use code, the criteria for approval found in section 30-6-108C, and the comprehensive plan. The motion for approval includes the findings and recommendations in the staff report on page 3, as well as adding the following condition of approval. The applicant shall amend the development agreement to include this property prior to recording the final plat.
And stormwater.
Stormwater, this is the first one.
Is adjusted per the.
That's what's
Yeah, I think that's here.
Okay, is it on the
Yeah, it's
printed sheets?
Yeah, it's on page 3, that was a portion, the findings and recommendations in the staff report on page 3.
saw that.
Oh, okay, you already.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did
Okay.
it right.
Okay, I was like,
You-
I don't
you
see
were
a page
good.
3.
Abigail, you did great. Any, second?
I'll second.
Great, thank you. All right, so clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Feldbush,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Secretary Kurtz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Van Bentham,
Yes.
Chair Anderson.
Yes. So with that, we have unanimous approval.
Congratulations.
Thank you, congratulations.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see what ends up happening with that area, you know, what it looks like when it's all done. Great. All right, so let's move on in our agenda. Staff reports?
Thank you. So if everything aligns correctly and applicants have all of their packet materials to us in time, you could have 3 agenda items on August 10th. So definitely let me know if you're not going to be able to be there, because with 3, we definitely wanna have quorum. And then that raises the next question, and we're getting ready to have interviews for planning commission. And we do have 1 vacancy, and I just wanted, this is an opportunity where and please know that I think planning commission is gelling and everybody is doing an amazing job, and I'm really I feel very fortunate as a staff member to be working with you all. But if for some reason planning commission isn't working out for you, now would be an awesome time to let staff know, because we are in the process of interviewing. The thing that we don't wanna know is that you're moving next month and you don't let us know until next month, because now we have this opportunity for interviews. So if you think that it's not working for you, you're in the ordinance, you know, there's an attendance where if you miss more than 4 in a year, then you're automatically gonna be a planning commissioner another time too. So if you just think it's not the time, then you know, now's the time to let us know, because we are interviewing. So think about it and let
Thank
me
you for
know.
No, you're being realistic, thank you for that, we appreciate that.
Yeah, and yes. Other than that, let's see. Town trustees hearing recently. We've had I don't think we've had anything go opposite of what you've suggested. We do have some code amendments coming for you. They are going to be coming in waves. There are a lot of little housekeeping things for items that just don't really support the comprehensive plan. So we're going to be making some changes. There are also some inconsistencies where one section will state X and another section will state Y. And then I'm pairing them with a big issue. So we're going to be talking about our sign code. We're going to be talking about adopting a flood code. We have flood maps, but we don't have a flood code. We're going to be talking about some big issues along with like maybe 10 small issues at a time. And so you'll see something at the end of August, the end of September, probably the end of October and November. So you'll be getting a lot of just some good house cleaning. And as Baseline has been working with the code the past few months, they're finding things that are inconsistent. And then have you all met Ton? Have you been introduced formally? Please come on up. Ton Hillenbrand is our new senior planner. And Ton comes most recently from Larimer County. And would you like to say a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, I mean, she summed it up. Most recently, I was with Larimer County for a handful of years, so it's really nice to transition then to a small town that's in Larimer County. It's been actually quite convenient in that sense. I'm a Colorado native, grew up actually in the Front Range of Denver. Parents went to school in Fort Collins, so I'm very familiar with the area and the growth that the area has seen over the years. But I've worked in Cheyenne, and then up in the resort communities of the mountains of Colorado, so I have a pretty diverse experience with different levels of planning, including consulting. So I'm really excited to be here, and it's been a really fun transition thus far and a great team, and so I'm happy to meet you all.
Welcome. Yeah.
Welcome to
So thank you. Yeah, Tawn's been with us about a month, and we really feel very, very lucky to have her. I have had the pleasure of watching Tawn navigate some very difficult and controversial code changes at the county with the utmost level of grace and dignity and just a sense of calmness that I think she's going to be a wonderful addition to our team. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Great, thank you for joining us and welcome to Berthoud. Thank you. You will soon learn all the best places to eat here. There aren't that many. So, great lunch places. Great.
So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. Is there anything that I owe you from previous meetings that I've not delivered?
Is it possible to give, you said, you talked about timing as far as next week. You said August 10th may be a meeting where we'd have at least one, maybe three items on the agenda. You mentioned, would there be an August 24th meeting that most likely?
Yes, August 24th so far. I believe the only thing that might be on that agenda is the flood code and some other land use code. I don't believe there's a public, and those are public hearing items as well, but I don't believe there's any land use cases scheduled yet. But somebody might, get their application in and say, we're ready to go.
Because I look online and I see how many things are coming in the pipeline. That's why I just wondered if, okay. So probably fairly consistently this fall.
Yes, yeah, thinking so. But again, a lot of the timing is up to the applicant, where Will and Tawn are providing those staff comments, and sometimes the applicant might have, other things on their plate and it's not a top priority. So we're somewhat beholden to their priorities as well.
Anything else that we want to bring up with Ann and staff?
I'm good, I think so.
Great.
All right, thanks everybody.
Do any of you have a report on anything you wanted to talk about? No? All right, sounds like we may make it over to the farmer's market yet, right?
22 minutes.
22 minutes, we'll be jogging over there. Where's your son?
All
Take
right.
him with us. But anyway, all right, so
Hopefully
with
winding
that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice job.
Yeah. I've never seen